Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hashtag Clocked In with me, your host, Jordan Edwards. I'm thrilled to have you tune in as we dive into the dynamic world of productivity, success, and stories of incredible individuals who've mastered the art of getting things done. Whether you're commuting, hitting the gym, or just relaxing at home, this podcast is the go-to source for inspiration and actionable tips to level up your productivity game. I'm on a mission to unravel the secrets of those who seem to effortlessly manage their time and achieve their goals. So if you're ready to clock in and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. We've got a lineup of amazing guests, industry experts, and thought leaders who will share their insights and strategies to help us crush your to-do list and make the most out of every moment. Get ready to get inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools you need to supercharge your productivity. This is Hashtag Clocked In with Jordan Edwards. Let's dive in. Hey, what's going on, guys? We got a special guest today here. We have Jonathan Labman. He has a background in trauma, abuse, and cults, and is a spiritual awakening professional with over 24 years of experience. He's done thousands of breakthroughs for people with abuse, anxiety, and stress, with John's help to achieve spiritual liberation. In this episode, we're going to touch on a few different things. We're going to touch on John's story and why we all should have hope and why we can create the life that we want. So, John, welcome to the Hashtag Clocked In podcast. How did you even get, like, your story's so incredible. Where did it all start off for you?
Well, Jordan, first, thanks for having me. And second, to your audience, please give this guy some likes and five-star reviews. He's doing this for free from the goodness of his art and from love for the world. So we get a great education because of people like Jordan. So give him some love back. And so where it started for me, well, first of all, I am a licensed professional counselor as well as a spiritual awakening teacher. There's a long way to get there. And I started out in a middle-class home near Trenton, New Jersey, where I was sexually abused from the age of 3, probably till about 8 or 9.
Oh my
It's hard to
God.
remember all the details. And because of that, I was very uncoordinated because trauma wrecks your brain. And, there's some actual permanent effects of trauma that we're just learning about now. And so
Really?
when I went to school, like I couldn't play any kind of team sports. So I was, last picked and bullied and, picked on and just harassed all the time. And by the time I got to seventh grade, I was also a trained singer from a very young age. And I was made to sing a soprano solo as a boy soprano in the seventh grade. So after that, I got the labels fag, fairy, sissy, mama's boy, queer, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I was so miserable by the time I was about 15 years old that I started looking for a way out of public school and also a way out of sort of a meaningless and life that was full of suffering.
Yeah.
And somebody came to my school and showed a film to all of us in the 10th grade, 750 students, about an international high school on the south coast of Wales in the UK in a castle that had been owned and renovated by William Randolph Hearst. And I was like, Zoom, sign me up. I run right down to the front of that auditorium. I don't know why I thought I could even get into a place like that, but I like applied. And then at about the same time, I started studying the New Testament, even though I was raised in a Reformed Jewish family. I didn't really have a belief in God at all. And at that time, I got accepted to that school, but they said I wouldn't be qualified for financial aid. And then there was a postal strike. This is 1971, so there's no internet, right? Long distance calls are a fortune. And they're like, we'll send you a letter about the financial aid as soon as we can get a letter to you. And in the meantime, I was praying to this God that I thought might exist. God, if you exist, do a miracle, get me that financial aid to school. Because they said, your family's too middle class. We're not going to give you financial aid. I was like, please, 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 please. So a month later, I got the financial aid to go for 2 years to Wales.
Oh wow.
And as a result, I converted and I became an evangelical Protestant because that's what I was studying when I was praying to this God. This version of God was, the evangelical Protestant version of God. So I became really pretty much of a religious fanatic at that point, and that became the way that I tried to deal with my problems, all of my problems.
Oh my god. And how was that in Wales? Because I think it makes a lot of sense if you're having issues, change scenery, right? But
Well, yeah, but in AA and NA, they call that geographics, right? Because what you don't know is your audience may know this. You take your problems with you wherever you go.
yes, yes,
Right. So the thing that happened was it was an amazing experience. I mean, you would say it was beyond a fable. It was fabulous, right?
yeah.
And it's an overused word, but there really were. There were kids from 50 countries. We even had kids from communist China in 1972 for about
Oh
six
wow.
weeks. And I got to travel in Europe and I got to sing in we opened an opera house in Germany with our little chorus, and I sang a solo with a duet from The Marriage of Figaro. I mean, all these crazy memories I have. I got to meet famous evangelicals. I got to travel to Switzerland and meet a guy named Francis Schaeffer, who introduced me to the college that I was going to go to. So it looked on the surface like a great experience, but I was very anxious and very confused. I had a lot of same-sex attractions, which I didn't know what to do with and didn't want to admit to myself. And it was very difficult because they were cramming 3 years of study into 2 years. So we went to school in the evening and we went to school on Saturday mornings. And every afternoon we had an activity, and two of those had to be a public service activity. So I joined the social services unit. I used to visit an old widowed lady who was probably suffering from dementia. And also, I went to a children's home for disabled kids. So there was all this activity all the time, but I was really very anxious and suffering from a fair amount of depression and what's called dissociation, which is that you're just so overwhelmed that you kind of go into freeze mode, like the possum that plays dead. So
Yeah.
it's like your logic goes offline. It's very hard to focus and concentrate. So that I took with me. And so even though I graduated successfully by the skin of my teeth, it was very difficult, even though I'd been an A student here. And when I came back to this country, I went to Haverford College, which was all male in
Yeah.
1973. And again, the attractions, I didn't know what to do with them. And we started studying the philosophy of Immanuel Kant, which is, basically you're making the universe up in your head. It doesn't really exist in the form that you see it. And I'm like, okay, I really started to have a spiritual experience of dissolving into everything else, but I thought I was going crazy. And also, the same-sex attractions were making me crazy as well. By the end of that semester, I really had a nervous breakdown, and I left school after one semester. I thought I was going to flunk, but I
Really?
got I got
So
A's and
it's
B's, but I really felt like I was flunking because my whole life was kind of falling apart again, and I was dissociating again like I had at school before. So I ended up at a Christian college, the one that this guy in Switzerland had recommended to me, and I was there for one semester, and then I thought, this isn't at all what I thought it was going to be like. Where's the Holy Spirit? Where's God? Where's a relationship with the divine? Where's all that juicy kind of right brain stuff that I'm supposed to experience? And it wasn't there. So I read a book about a community in California that was trying to duplicate the life of the early church in Jerusalem after Jesus had died and was resurrected, allegedly resurrected, right? Okay. And I sold everything I owned and went out there and joined that commune. But
so
within
you,
about a month, I was really, really clinically depressed. And I was washing test tubes in a hospital laboratory. That's the kind of work I was doing to support myself. It was ridiculous, right? I was bored out of my mind. And again, where was this promised juicy experience of oneness with the Holy Spirit? I
yeah.
just didn't see it. And what they did after a couple months was they put me on a month-long fast, water only, in isolation. And by the end of that month, I'd started at 140 pounds. I was 115 pounds. I've been writing to my parents, and they said, if you don't come home, we're going to come get you. And the people in the community said, well, this worked for a woman with postpartum depression. It should work for you, but it's not working for you. And you can do whatever you want. They can't come and get you. And I'm like, yeah, I better go home because I don't know what the heck's going on here, but I feel worse and worse. I got home And within about 10 days, I was hospitalized for major depressive disorder and schizoaffective disorder, which is a kind of dissociative disorder. And I was put in a locked ward in a private mental hospital and given electroconvulsive therapy, shock therapy, three
Oh
times
my
a week.
goodness.
And every time I was about to have that treatment, I thought I was either going to die or going to lose my mind entirely, lose my identity. So after 2 months of that, my parents took me out of there. They didn't think it was doing a good enough job. Eventually, I got into a rehab program, went back to school to the same college. In the meantime, my parents announced they were getting a divorce.
Yeah.
So after all this instability, I had to stay at college that summer.
Oh
And
my.
then, there was no home to go to anymore. My father was already married to his second wife. He didn't have any room for me. My mother didn't have any room in her, one bedroom or two bedroom apartment, whatever. I was like, on my own suddenly. So I survived that first summer, but then during that next year, I was invited to go to a community up in the Valley Forge, Pennsylvania area. That was, one of the churches that formed the denomination that created the college I went to, right? So it
So it
was
was you. So it was you constantly looking for these different areas and these different groups and being accepted somewhere.
I was looking for love and family, and I was looking for God and peace and all these things that were promised in the New Testament and by all these Christian people that nobody delivered on. And, but, nobody, including me, knew that I had been traumatized as a kid. I didn't remember that for, another 30 years, until I was 52.
Oh my God.
And I wasn't going to deal with my sexuality. I thought being gay was a death sentence. And in 1969, 70, 71, it was. You could be
Yeah.
killed for being gay. And if you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, you would be. So I was like, just immerse me in my religious life and my relationship with God, and everything will go away, everything will be fine. But the community I ended up with in the Valley Forge area, I took vows to be a member there for my life, my whole life, right? Like wedding vows, right? Like you just got married,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you're supposed to obey them in doctrine or, interpretation of the Bible and in your life. So they had final say over everything you said, did, and thought. And just after I went back to school for my last semester, the elder that I had stayed with that summer and his whole family was excommunicated. And that means he was considered an apostate or somebody who was going to go to hell.
Oh wow.
And I'd stayed with them all summer and they'd been really nice to me. So I was a little confused, to say the least. But I made a promise to God, I thought, so I stayed. And over
And that,
6 years, that place devolved into a brainwashing cult. So,
that's the most interesting thing because people don't realize that the circles they're in, and I want the audience to realize this, that when you're in different circles, like you
yeah.
guys might want to make more money. So like if you look around and all your friends are making a similar amount, then you might have to go find a new circle. Or if all your friends are, you want everyone to get in shape and all your friends are a little bit heavier, then you might need to find friends who are very much in shape. The reason I'm saying this is because the people you're around cause you to think differently. So the benefit of this nowadays is that you can just turn on this podcast, get some different perspectives, and think about this a little differently. But when John's going through this in 1973, 1974, 1975, there is no phone. There is no other perspective. There is complete immersion, in which case the only way out is mentally out, which he said he was already struggling with. So I just want to clarify that just because it's very important for us to realize that we can create our own environments, but like back at that time, it was very difficult and challenging to do that.
It's a really good point. And, I don't think so much about the differences from the perspective of the young generation, but you guys can find any information on any group, any negative feedback that you want. You have access to all kinds of information. Now, some of it isn't accurate, okay, and we know that, but they call it pardon me, misinformation or malinformation. But, back in the day, I just had what was in front of me and maybe some books. And so, you know, I got settled in a house with four or five other guys. I finally had a sense of family. The woman who initially talked to me, who really ran the cult, gave me more love in 2 hours and more attention than anybody had ever given to me in my life. So it looked like there was somebody that was finally going to love me and understand me and help me. And what I didn't realize was I was going through what we call in psychology a repetition compulsion. I was finding somebody similar to my abuser who had looked like they were going to give me love and then turn that love on its ear and turn it into fear and terror. And over 6 years, that place devolved into a brainwashing called every move you made was watched. Every sin that you allegedly committed was had to either be confessed in public or discussed in public in front of everybody else. So you're constantly being humiliated and humbled. It was excruciating, but it was familiar, right? So
Yeah.
when we grow up with trauma, discomfort, insecurity, anxiety is familiar. It feels like who we are.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, well, this is kind of familiar. So, and I made a promise, so I'm sticking around. Well, toward the end, somebody tried to burn the church down.
No way.
No kidding. And rather than the elders and this woman behind them, rather than them saying, oh, it must be our fault, we're just, creating bad juju in the neighborhood, they said, all of you guys who are in the church, you're hiding secret sin. Even though you're Christians, you've been living this, incredibly intense life, giving a tenth of your pre-tax income to the church, keeping the Sabbath holy on Sundays. We weren't allowed to work, no electronic media, which was television and radio in those days. And you're in church all day. And by the way, we're also celibate, all of us in our early 20s, totally celibate. Weren't allowed to touch ourselves. No
Wow.
kidding. It was crazy. And after all that, they were saying, you guys are hiding secret sin, so you're all suspended from communion. You're all going to be excommunicated if you don't fess up your secret sin. And finally, about 6 months into that process, I said, guys, I think I'm gay. I have all these attractions. And they were like, yeah, we don't think that's it because you never acted on any of that. I'm like, what? What else is there? I don't have anything else to hide. What do you think I'm
Yeah.
hiding? I didn't remember that I'd been sexually abused as a child. That was
Yeah.
totally not in my memory at all. It was dissociated. So for the next 6 months, I had this, double bind your audience may be familiar with. Somebody gives you two choices. My
Yeah.
choices were this. If you're gay and you leave the church, you're going to get AIDS and die and go to hell because this was 1984 and AIDS epidemic was raging and there was no cure. That's choice number one. That's door number one, Jonathan. Door number two is if you carry your pews back into the church and you haven't fessed up your secret sin according to our understanding of what that probably is, you're doubly damned to hell and you're going to go to hell. I'm like, okay, damned if I go back, damned if I leave. 6 months, I paced the floors in my group housing situation till 3 o'clock in the morning, and then went to work every morning at 7:30, trying to figure out what in the world to do because I didn't have independent thinking. I couldn't make a different choice. Finally, we were carrying pews back into the church.
Yeah.
And it was a Saturday morning. I was like, I've just got to get out of here. So all the guys were somewhere else. I don't know whether they were doing some athletic thing or what they were doing, but I had an excuse. I packed my car twice, ran to the nearest storage place, threw everything into storage, and fled for my life.
Really?
And the next day, I was in a therapist's office, and that therapist saved my life.
Wow.
So, and I was 29 years old when that happened. So I was just a little older than you are now.
Yeah.
And I had a job, but I had no money saved. I had almost no possessions. I just had my bedroom furniture. I had a car that was constantly breaking down. And I thought, oh my God, this is God's judgment on me. I'm going to go to hell and I'm going to get in an accident in a broken down car, right? I was absolutely terrorized.
Yeah.
But that therapist, she saved my life. And here's the point for your audience that's so important. You can go through all kinds of crap, guys and gals, and listen to all kinds of people give you all kinds of advice about your life, and you can end up feeling absolutely hopeless and in despair, like you can't do anything about your life. But somewhere, even in the brainwashed person like I was in those days, somewhere inside of you, there's a voice that says, yeah, I don't know about this. Maybe they're not really right. Maybe I'm really not going to go to hell. Maybe they're wrong about everything. Or maybe I ought to at least ask a question about whether they're right. Because we weren't allowed to ask whether they were right or wrong after a while. We couldn't question anything. So that therapist, first thing she said to me was, I was like, I feel suicidal. She's like, why are you here then? I'm like, what do you mean? Well, she said, if you were really suicidal and didn't have any hope, you wouldn't be in my office. I'm like, oh, you mean I really have hope? She uncovered that I had hope. She
Yeah.
uncovered that there was something inside of me that knew better than the cult, the brainwashing cult that I had lived in. And over the next 18 months, she and I uncovered all of that. What was true for me? What was I feeling? What was my sexuality? What was my orientation? What did I want to do with my life? And that woman really, she saved my life. She also gave me a pattern for what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, although I didn't get to it for a while. Because the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to go to New York and be a Broadway singer.
Oh my God. And but I want to just take a moment here because it's so important that when we change our inputs, we can change our outputs. So
Absolutely.
when you start getting different insights, it can change your perspective completely. And even though John, the past 29 years had so much damage, abuse, being in the cult, like all of it, it
Right.
allowed him to open. He knew better deep down. And there's a lot of us who know better, and we know that we have more opportunities and we can do more.
Right.
So, but the funny thing is, when we do stuff, we always have to do it for everyone's like, oh, you got to make money or you got to do this or you got to, but there's many different ways of payment. You know what I mean? So it's that understanding of better understanding the world and having a more holistic perspective that really gives to that. So it comes down to not just, hey, what am I doing right now and what's making money, but it's like, what do I even enjoy? Like the biggest project is who are we really? And that's one of the conversations I have with one of my mentors. He's 79 years old and he says the same thing where he's like, the project's not about making all this money or doing all this or doing all that. It's about learning who you are, what you enjoy, and then just taking inventory on that. Because there's so many times we're in places where we just will sit there and go, I don't like this. Then why are you here? Like,
Right.
which is so important.
It is. And, your audience has a wide range of opportunities to study and look at all different kinds of perspectives. And, what I did with the rest of my life, I'll be 70 in 3 months. So, what I did with the rest of my life was start looking at other perspectives. And what I found was that, the human brain has two lobes, the left and the right lobe. Just mentioning a book I'm reading called Whole Brain Living by Jill Bolte Taylor. It's a really great resource for your audience as well. I'll be mentioning my own book later. But, she basically says you need to develop your left brain, which is all your logic and your words and your interaction with the world and your survival instincts. But you also need to develop the right brain, which is your interaction with spirituality, with what we would call the ineffable, with the universe or God or the absolute or whatever name we want to call that. Your sense that you're actually part of a whole is in your right brain. Your sense of the fact that this present moment is all there is and it's an eternal present moment, that's in your right brain. And what I found over many years is you have to develop both sides So I've worked both as a psychologist and as a spiritual awakening teacher because psychology works great in the left brain. The right brain, you need what's commonly called spirituality for that. Because if you don't have that and you keep trying to go after what your ego says, your ego is the source of your problems. So if you can transcend your ego, which is what the spiritual enlightenment is about, most of your problems are going to fall away. Not that it's not hard to be here in the physical body in the physical world, because it is. Everybody knows it is, and lately it's gotten harder, right? For sure, it's gotten harder.
Absolutely.
But we have the capacity to deal with all that. But the thing is that nobody teaches us how to even be a human being,
Yes.
right? So you don't learn how to deal with your thoughts and your feelings and your physical sensations in school. They don't teach you any of that. They don't teach your audience and you and me that 90 to 95% of our thoughts are false. False. Right. Ask any cognitive behavioral therapist about that, any psychologist. Not only that, they don't teach you that those false thoughts produce very strong negative emotions: sadness, fear, and anger. And so a lot of the suffering that we have in our lives is self-created because we believe thoughts that are actually false. And false thoughts, whether spoken outwardly to a lie detector machine or spoken inwardly just in our own head, produces a physiological response called an adrenal release. Hello. Why does the lie detector machine work? Because it measures the adrenal release results. Heart rate increases, respiration increases, perspiration increases, blood pressure increases. Listening to your own thoughts, audience, every day and not questioning whether they're true or not leads to all kinds of adrenal release, all kinds of fight or flight response every single day of your life.
Wow.
And if your emotion, however, is coming from something real, like grandma just died and I'm grieving and I'm crying and I want to plant a million trees in grandma's honor, so I'm going to take my emotion, which is energy in motion. If it's from a real source, something that really happened, that emotion is energy in motion that leads to insight and wisdom and can lead to action. Nobody teaches us that either. So we don't know what to do when we get angry. We don't know, is my anger coming from something real, like somebody just stepped on my toe, or am I making something up in my head that's making me angry? And so we make all kinds of chaos in our lives because nobody ever teaches us how to deal with thoughts and feelings. So your
Yes.
whole left brain is constantly confused and you're making all kinds of impulsive decisions that are destructive. And
And
you're
what would
right.
some
What's that?
what would some of those impulsive decisions be?
Well,
Like
I'm leaving
destructive.
my girlfriend because it looks like she cheated on me based on the text that I just got from my best friend. Right? So my best
Instead of
friend,
going right to the source. Yes, the rational
yeah,
thoughts are missing. Yes.
yeah, like, okay, somebody's telling me something, or I think something like, man, where was she for the last hour? She didn't respond to my text. She must be cheating on me. I've
Yeah.
had clients in my office telling me that's what they think. And what does that do? Then that means he's going to go yell at her and she's done nothing wrong. And she's going to say, well, F you, buddy, out of my face. I don't want to deal with some crazy who's making false accusations about me. That's just one example of what we do.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I appreciate that because it brings it more to light where it's creating this chaos, creating the destruction, creating the um different emotional states that they're trying to recreate, even though they don't realize that that's one of the ones that they hold, even though they might not want to.
Right. You know, your audience is holding emotions. That's the other thing. Then we're all taught to repress emotion. Men and women both. I mean, women get a little more leeway for crying, but men and women both in my offices have told me that they're not allowed to express what they feel.
Really?
Okay, well, what does that mean? So that means now I have all this emotion, I have all this thought, this the false thought has led to all this kind of roiling negative emotion. Now I've got to hold it all in because I've got to look like a good person, and I'm not allowed to be emotional. So now on top of everything else, I'm tense in my physicality. I'm not breathing enough because that's the way we quelch emotion by shutting down our breath and tightening up our muscles.
Yeah.
And we wonder why our fathers had heart attacks at age 50 or strokes, right?
Yeah.
So like all this repressed emotion then leads to more trouble. So what
Yes.
what I do in my work is I help people to unwind all this suppressed stuff and in a way that is manageable, not in a way that's overwhelming. It's not like you're going to have a panic attack, when you come work with somebody like me. It's
Yeah.
like we want to kind of open the gates on the Hoover Dam and let some of Lake Mead out. All that emotional repression is like a big lake of you know force field water behind us. We got to let that out.
Yeah.
Once we do that, then people can begin to see, oh, I'm feeling this. Where's it coming from? Or I'm thinking this. What is that producing in my life? My false thoughts produce chaos. It produces fear of the future. Your people watching, listening today, they want a better future, but there's a whole lot of fears that their mind is generating based on past experience, which says to them, you can't have a better future because of what used to happen.
Yeah.
Your future is a catastrophe. In Yiddish, a cholera. It's a
Yeah.
cholera.
Yeah. No, I mean it's true. It's true. You literally sit there and when you see these people, like earlier this year I ended up doing a sabbatical
Mhm.
and it was like 3 months and I was like, oh my God, because you start thinking about all these different ideas and these things, and you're like, I'm gonna be homeless, like I'm gonna die, like, and every single road leads to death, and you're like, it's just not true. Like, there's many people who have done many other things a lot longer and a lot different environment, and they didn't die. Like, no one died. They're fine.
Right. So typically almost all of our thoughts about the future are negative and they're all lies because nobody made us a soothsayer or a palm reader or a crystal ball reader. We don't know the
Yeah.
future. If you're making stuff up about the future in your head, you can guarantee it's false. It's a lie.
Yeah.
And that stops people from doing what they really want to do and love to do. That stops them from exploring who they are, what their gifts are, right? You're a unique human being. The Hindus say that you are God itself on the chair.
That's
They,
pretty cool.
they say, I am Atman Brahman. Three Sanskrit words that I know, about the only three that I do know, right? This individual consciousness that you are
Yeah.
is God itself.
Yeah.
So, and that you have that connection, you have that capacity in your right brain. Doesn't mean you're omnipotent. You can't do anything. You don't have all the power in the universe, or you're omniscient. You can't know everything in the universe, but you have a sense of eternity and infinity. It's in you already.
Yes.
And if you're not in touch with that, it's because your left brain is too confused. You need to sort that out so you can get into your right brain. Right brain practices are easy.
What are some of
Medit
those?
Meditation, mindfulness, like just being present in the moment. If you're if you walk outside and you just look at the sky and you don't think anything, it'll feel like you're disappearing into the sky. That's your sense of infinity right there. Your listeners, they have a current present moment experience. They can only experience with their senses the present moment. Past and future are all ideas, they're thoughts. They don't exist. Now, we use them as if they exist. The only thing that we can experience as human beings is present moment. So, guys traditionally go hunting and fishing and go play golf because that's where they actually experience the present moment awareness.
Yes. And this is something I've realized
Or they
early on.
surf, right? Or they skate or they
or
ski.
s- or even scuba dive, or
Yes.
doing martial arts or any of these or go on a run. Like because when you do these different activities, it forces you to be present. And when you're present, you can be so much more of yourself and you feel so much better. That's why you
That's right.
referenced the wedding. Literally, when I got married, before I did, I got there like 2 hours before, dressed, and I gave my brother, who was the best man, my phone. And he's like, "Oh, you don't need your phone." I'm like, "I do not need my phone for the next 8 hours." Like, and that's what I did. I just gave it to him and then I grabbed it afterwards. But there's too many inputs where when you can remove inputs, it allows you to be so much more present. And even these podcasts, that's why like I use the phone as the camera. So I'm
Right.
having this super present conversation and I might be taking notes, but at the same time, I'm trying to get as much out of this as I can. And that's usually what it ends up being is these present moments. And then it fills you up because then you could check all the notifications afterwards. You can
That's
do all
right.
the activities afterwards. And that's why
See,
it's good to do these drop downs things. 100%.
I think so. And with the computer in your hand, right? I used my
Yes.
first computer in 1981. It was a word processor. That was all it did,
Yes.
right? And I ran a word processing department for an engineering firm. So we were like state of the art that, but now you've got the whole world in your hand and it's full of nonsense.
Yes.
Not, it means it's not related to your present sensory experience, which is where you're connected to reality. So, listeners, if you feel like disconnected and fritzed out and depressed and anxious, first thing to do is put your damn phone down,
Yes.
turn
Yes.
it off.
I've noticed a lot of that.
Yeah, go outside and smell the air,
Because
literally.
when these people have challenges, they'll sit there in the moment, have a moment, and then they'll just start scrolling because it's the disassociating of the
Ah,
feelings. And you want to actually feel those to reach that underlying pinning of like, hey, why did I actually get pissed off there? Like, why am I really getting there? Yeah.
right, your emotions, audience, are your friends.
Yeah.
Your emotions actually are energy in motion if they're coming from a good place. They will move you in a new direction if you look at them carefully and track where they're coming from. Now, if they're coming from some nonsense idea in your head,
Yeah.
which I love saying, I love saying it, okay, then don't listen to them.
Yeah.
All what do I know about anybody else, what they're saying, thinking, or doing? Nothing unless I ask them. So all my thoughts about other people are false. All
Yeah.
my thoughts about the future are false, and most of my thoughts about myself are false. And in fact, thought itself is not sense reality. It's nonsense. It's a later recounting by the mental mind of what just happened. So even
Yes.
when we're not talking felt, true, lived experience. That's
Yes.
all right brain stuff, and none of us have been taught almost any of that. When I started out in this field in 2000, the idea of mindfulness and meditation was not mainstream. It was ooga booga wooga. It was woo woo woo, right? It was like
Yes.
new age bullshit, right? And now everybody says this like we've always talked about mindfulness and meditation, but we haven't. So
Yes.
it's very simple. The skills needed to be an effective human and to wake up to your spirituality, your spiritual side, your connection with the divine, incredibly simple, ridiculously simple. You can go into 100 million different cults and groups and religious orientations and do all their rituals and buy all their clothes and their jewelry and their furniture, and you'll miss the point. The point is you are already connected to the divine and the divine itself. You just have to uncover that. You just need the simple skills to uncover that. That's what I teach.
I love it. I think it's awesome because you start to realize that it's not so much that you need anything, and it's that we all have hope.
We
And
all
you
have
bring so
hope because it's all here already. It's all here already. You don't have to go anywhere else.
yeah. And what would you say are some of the key action steps that maybe someone listening could take today that would maybe like move the needle for them in some sort of in their daily activities?
Okay, based on our conversation today, I would say take a half an hour and turn your phone off while you're wide awake and go take a walk outside.
I love that.
Or if you don't have time for that, just turn away from the computer screen and take some deep breaths and listen to the sounds in the room for 1 minute. 1 minute. It's absolutely, it'll reduce your stress levels by about 1 to 5% in a way that you can feel. That's the beginning. Then, very simply, if you started keeping track of what you thought every day and
Yes.
what those thoughts made you feel,
Yes.
just I have exercises in my book about this. So I'm gonna give your listeners my book at the end of this.
I love it.
So I've got it all laid out, how to work with the thoughts, how to work with the emotions, how to work with trauma reactions, what we call flashback. I've got simple instructions on how to meditate. And you can be mindful, listeners, you can be mindful just by noticing what the coffee tastes like. This is actually water, but
But you bring up a valid point of actually going into your real emotions because
yeah.
I had another guest come on and he talked about this idea of like burning memories and how to
Hmm.
get super present. And his idea was that you would stand there, look around, take everything in, and then start to realize, what do you feel? What do you
Yes.
hear? What do you think about? And you'd close your eyes and then you'd go burn it, burn it, burn it. And the idea would kind of come to him and he'd be able to transport himself to those different places because he
Hmm.
was about to lose his vision and go blind. And it's just this, it's another very similar idea where you sit there, slow down, and realize that the cup is blue. Realize that the mic is black. Realize that the flower looks like a heart. Realize all these things around you because we miss so much because we're trying to be
Right.
so productive, but yet we're running so many hours of social media time and this and that, and we don't have time and this. But like if we actually did what the real action was, then you'd actually move the needle forward for you.
That's right. And it's as simple as stopping to breathe. And I would say even don't even pay attention to your thoughts. The whole point of meditation is that you are going back to sensory experience. In meditation, you're always focused on your breath or
Yes.
some mantra, which this is another kind of funny way to focus on your breath. Okay. And breath is a sensation, it's not a thought.
Yeah.
So, what we're trying to do with meditation and with mindfulness and with being present in the moment is get back into the senses. And emotion is a subset of your senses.
Yes.
So, emotion is really mostly felt along the spine, which people don't even know. People think, oh, when I'm sad, it feels like it's out here somewhere. No, it's actually in here.
Yes.
But again, no, Jordan, nobody teaches us
No,
how we even feel emotion.
uh,
I'm
uh,
like,
we don't learn emotion. We don't learn how to actually build self-con or what even these words even mean.
what does self-confidence mean?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean an absence of fear.
Yeah.
It means, okay, I feel afraid, and I know I've felt afraid a million times before, and I just take my fear and walk it into the new thing that I want to do, and I do it. And the fear
Yes.
eventually goes away. That's what confidence is about. It's not about a lack of fear. A lack of fear could just be plain stupidity. I better be afraid if I'm learning to rappel down a cliff and I don't know what I'm doing, right?
Absolutely. 100%. And it's funny because the more times you do the activity over and over again, and this was even for me, like I've worked out for many years and we went to a new gym and I was like, I'm intimidated. Where do I go? What am I doing? And it's like,
That's right.
do you not know how to work out? And it's like, no, I know how to work out, but like these people are big. Like,
I don't know how to work out here. Well, this is an interesting point. So, there's a kind of fear of the new. Anything that's new to us, our animal brain will respond to like it's something dangerous. So, a new
yes,
person, a new place, a new hobby, a new activity, a new gym, a new place to go for vacation, like Cabo, if you've never been there before, right? All of
yes,
that can provoke excitement, but it can provoke fear. It provokes an adrenal release.
So, so I
And
mean, you
then
bring
we add a story to that, and the story
yes,
makes it 5 times worse.
and you bring up these major points because like the funny thing is that we've gone there before. Like we went to Cabo for the honeymoon, but we've been there before, but we never went to one of the hotels. But
Ah,
we went to this other hotel, and it was like an all inclusive, like a super nice one. And you end up going. And it's like, oh my God, how could I go to this place and not know about this? Because there's the two sides of it. Like you're saying, the fear when you go in the beginning, and then you get there and you're like, oh my, this is 1,000 times better than before. And
right,
but this is true about your friends. This is true about the jobs you have. This is true about the restaurants you go to. This is true about everything. Everyone sits there and goes, wait, that's my favorite Asian spot. And it's like, you never had a favorite Asian spot before that. Like there was a point when you had other things that were your favorite. And it's this idea of like, no matter what we do, no matter what we say, as long as we're trying new things, because even if you try a different hotel or a different restaurant and realize that one's not nearly as good as the other one, you won't feel regret. You'll feel
right.
revalidated that the restaurant that you chose as your favorite Asian spot is still this single favorite Asian spot. But with
That's
new
right.
information, this can always change. And that's what
Right.
I kind of realized because it's not indecisive. It's just as you pile in more information, it can always get better and better and better.
That's right. We learn and grow. That's part of the organism that we are as human beings. We have a brain that will learn and grow until the very last days of our life. It's amazing. And at 70, I'm still reading new books and learning new things and going to new places and meeting all of these wonderful podcast hosts like you. We had this awesome, 55-minute conversation for our preliminary. I'm like, when would I have ever had a conversation with Jordan Edwards? I mean, I wouldn't have known you unless I'd done this.
And that's the thing that people don't realize is they set up situations that
Hmm.
cause them to interact with people. So for
Right.
myself, as I started this podcast, I think I just posted another one today. So it's episode 210, but there's
Wow.
still another in the archives. I've been doing it for like 4 years now. And the thing I
Hmm.
realized is that no matter what happens, your network is your net worth. That's
Hmm.
your network is one of the biggest things you can have. So my
Right.
thought is, if I can have people come on, some people are strategic, like, hey, maybe this makes sense business wise, maybe this
Hmm.
makes sense perspective wise. And you start to tickle, like, touch all these different pieces, and you start to realize that you're like, oh, wait a second. That guy is very interesting in this demographic. That one's
Right.
very interesting in this demographic. And it causes your brain to think differently, which
Hmm.
I get excited about because for
Sure.
me, it's more about understanding, like, who these different incredible people are and then it cascades from there because then you start looking at the compounding and like I have a whole sheet of all the different guests who have come on and it's like wait that guy's that guy and it's like it combines it all but you're absolutely right I never would have spoken to someone who's been in a commune who the spiritual awakening does all these different things
Right.
if I didn't see the emails and we didn't contact and we didn't get connected and we didn't have those conversations and it's but my point being here is that if I didn't step into the place of curiosity and be open to being a podcast host then I
Right.
never would put myself in a situation to interact with all these different people because when you really think about it most people stay in their circle whether it's a
Yep.
work circle and they have their same four people or it's a friendship circle and they have their same four people because they
Yeah.
don't prioritize other relationships. And I
Hmm.
think that's not always true. I think it's good to meet new people and I think it's good to keep those alive. And one of the tips or tricks that I'll throw everyone out there for the audience is it was just Thanksgiving. So one of the ways I maintain relationships with people is I text everybody who might be of importance or might be of a friend or whatever or a friend I want to have or whatever it is, and I text them Happy Thanksgiving. And it's like, "Oh, but I thought Jordan's always a taker." No, no, you just got a Thanksgiving text that says I'm grateful for you. You don't like what is the person gonna say? They have to be like, "Oh, you too," or Happy Thanksgiving or whatever it may be,
Hmm.
just to realize that like, hey, it's not all about that, but my thought on it is if I send a text to this person, then that means we're friends. Like, you know what I mean? And it's an easy
Hmm.
way to like kind of get through that. So one of the things we talked about in our intro call is how to create happiness in our life.
Yeah.
So what are some of the ways that people can do that through very easy activities?
So I think paradoxically, the simplest way to create happiness is to realize that if if you have self-esteem issues and you start looking at the thoughts you have about yourself and you start realizing that most of those negative thoughts are false, right away you're going to be happier. As soon as you notice that those thoughts are false, that you're not really too skinny or too tall or too this or too little that or not good enough for this or that, that right away can create a bit more happiness. What we were talking about earlier, which is have an experience of your senses in the present moment, that creates a grin on your face when I say it, right? You know
Yes.
what that feels like. Let your curiosity begin to guide you because your curiosity is a right brain function. Your openness to life is a right brain function. And instead of letting those false fears about the future shut you down, okay, look and see. Is there anything to be afraid of if I try this impulsive new idea of mine? All right, let me see if there really is anything. But if it's really minor, then I'm just going to go try that new restaurant or that new hotel or that new relationship or that new gym, and I'm going to see how it works. And right away, there's a little uptick in happiness. The major thing I would say for people, though, listening is you need to discover what's uniquely you. I like to think of people as a kaleidoscope. Every kaleidoscope has very different color crystals in it, and they keep changing configuration according to who you're with and what you're doing. But the color crystals are always pretty much the same. You're kind of given a certain specialty, a special uniqueness. You don't have to make yourself special. You're already unique. There will never be another one like you in the universe, even if they cloned you, because the clone's experiences would be different, right? So your uniqueness, the more of that you can bring out of your heart and give to the world, the more you can use all of your talents and abilities in your life, the happier you're going to be.
Yes. Yeah, and really stepping into who you are and what you enjoy, I think is so big. And it starts off by doing different activities because you don't know what you're gonna love. You don't know what you're gonna enjoy.
That's right.
And you have no idea. And like sometimes you do that for people and it completely changes everything. Like there was one time, yeah, there was one time for my mom actually. She ended up going she was working out at home and then we were like, "Oh, we'll get you a gym membership." So we got her this gym membership and we paid for the full year and then we
Wow.
gave it to her in like as a gift, so like birthday, like Hanukkah, whatever. And in that year, she became obsessed. She's like, "This is great. I love this." And now she's working out all the time. And it's the point of, hey, sometimes you need to push people. And by
Hmm.
pushing people, that means maybe paying for them, maybe providing them, because sometimes they can't do it on their own, even though it's
Right.
a minor thing. But sometimes you got to push people. And what that might look like is like buying them the experience, or maybe that's inviting them to the experience or opening their eyes to that
Right.
because otherwise they're not open to these ideas. And sometimes it takes a little bit of a push, but also getting around different people causes a push as well.
Right. So we call all of that encouragement, right?
Yes.
And I'm giving a little of my courage to them to help them to get through that fear that they have, right?
Yes.
And that's a great gift. Now as a therapist and a teacher, I have to be careful that I'm not pushing too hard. You kind of have to work the edge, which your audience is familiar with. There's just enough challenge, but not too much so that you're terror stricken, right? But just
Yes.
enough challenge so that you feel the edge of fear, but you've got to move through that. You got to take your fear and do the thing anyway. And I think that's important. The other thing I would say about happiness is that as long as you're defining yourself by a set of words at all, what we call ego, as long as you're living in ego and defending ego as if that's what you are, you're going to be unhappy. If you realize that ego is like So the analogy I like to use is you trying to define yourself with words is like trying to put the ocean in a glass of water. You are connected
Yes.
to everything that is, and you're trying to define yourself with a little tiny set of words, which you then defend. And,
Yes,
and
because yeah, 100%. Because words have limitations, and then that's why it's funny. It's like, John, what do you like? We were literally having this discussion before the podcast. I go, John, it's hard to like put in your intro because you've done so many different things, and it's like, because
right,
when you ask most people, hey, John, what do you do? And they're like, I'm a accountant or I'm a this, and it's like, no, 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 you're much more than that. Like, you're telling me you don't like. Maybe you love bird watching, or maybe you love going on walks, or maybe you love running, or maybe you love doing whatever, but you're
yeah.
more than just the profession. And I think our society has caused us to just label ourselves as the profession. And it's like, that's very poor for people mentally in the mental framework of like what it is from what I've seen.
It
Um,
is because if they lose their job, they feel like they've lost their identity, which is totally not correct. And, even if
100%.
their identity is challenged, if somebody says to you, Jordan, I think you could be an artist, and you're like, I've never thought of myself as an artist. I have a I have a cousin who like he was in marketing and sales all his life. His wife made him sit down and do some drawing because it relaxed him.
Yeah.
He became this unbelievable artist, like pencil drawings so detailed they look like photographs. And he
And
just he
he
just
never would have
started
known that
doing this.
skill.
He
Yeah.
would
And then,
never have known, right?
and
So
so
like
it's like, yeah, 100%. So what are you doing that you don't know about?
right. So audience, if you think of yourself as a marketing rep and you've never, drawn and suddenly you pick up a pencil and you're loving drawing and you're losing yourself in the drawing, like you disappear into the act of drawing. That's like an enlightened moment, disappearing into the act of drawing. That's an awesome thing. That's just like your listeners, they're already disappearing into the act of hunting or fishing or playing golf. They stop thinking about a self and they swing the club and they have a
Yeah.
great swing. If they're thinking about themselves, they really have a lousy swing,
Yeah.
right? So there's so much potential for us as human beings to move beyond the ego and to embrace the connection with what we call the all of it or the divine.
Yeah.
That's where the best happiness is because when you start to understand what you are, it's like, okay, the kvetchy little voice that says it can't do anything is really going to be overcome by the right brain in its connection to the divine. And you really want that kvetchy, I don't know if your listeners know, kvetch means complain. The kvetchy little voice
Yeah.
is like an enemy to you, really.
Absolutely.
So the spiritual path is really to become an integrated human being able to deal with humanity with your thoughts, feelings, and sensations, but also able to know the immensity of your being since it's connected to the whole universe. And to be able to feel that connection, those things together, that to me is happiness.
I love it. I love it. And John, because we only have a few more minutes, tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about what's going on with your book.
Well, I've written a book called Being Human and Waking Up, and it's available on Amazon and on Kindle, but I want to give it to any listener that's made it this far because I want to match your generosity in giving your time and kindness to your audience. So I'm going to give them a free copy of the book. It's a PDF form, and all they have to do is write to me. It's very simple. The word support at simplyawake.com. So SUPPORT, the at sign, SIM as in Mary, PLYAWAKE.com, and just say book, and I will send you a book. I will also send you a link for a free 15-minute consult if you would like one, audience. And the book is really an instruction manual on all the simplest techniques I've found to first inhabit your humanity and be a successful human. Learn how to deal with your thoughts and your feelings and your sensations so that you can also open up to your right brain connection to divinity, to the universe, to all that is. Be your whole unique self. That's what the world is waiting for, and that's what you're waiting for. It's all there right away. And the book is a very simple guide. It's not intellectual. It's not, academic. It's just, here's how you do it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Sean. This has been absolutely amazing.
It's been a pleasure, Jordan. I've really enjoyed it. And folks, again, let me remind you, please give this guy some 5-star reviews and some likes and loves, because he's giving this away for free.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. For that, we'll give you a complimentary coaching session in the link below with Edwards Consulting. Hope to see you there and have a great day and keep clocking in.